Hello everyone, I'm Sunspear and welcome to my Guild Wars 1 skill review project. Today I am talking about the Paragon, No Attribute, and PvE-Only skills. We're going to go ahead and jump into it, starting with Spear of Fury. So Spear of Fury is 5 energy, 1 second activation time, 8 second recharge, spear attack. This attack deals plus 40, yes, 40 damage. And if it hits a foe suffering from a condition, you gain 6 strikes of adrenaline. In addition to so this is the Friend of the Kurzix or Friend of the Luxon's title track skill. You do have to have somewhat high to be able to, this I'm pretty sure is maxed out. You do have to be fairly high to get this. That 6 strikes of adrenaline is in addition to the 1 strike of adrenaline you get from hitting, so this will basically net you 7 adrenaline, which is ludicrous. This is extremely powerful. Plus 40 damage is insane on an attack like this. You do not see plus 40 damage on attack skills the vast majority of the time. It's so huge. Quick activation is really nice. Only 5 energy, 8 second recharge is relatively low, and gaining so much adrenaline is really powerful. This is an extremely powerful skill. Extremely powerful. Of course, PvE only player Paragons can make use of it. I'm still giving it a 5, because if I am using a spear as a player, chances are I want this skill. There are some instances where I don't, to be clear, but I can't think of them as a player, particularly that have to be very specific narrow circumstances. If I'm using a spear, I want this skill. It deals so much damage, it gets you so much of what you want. It's just very, very powerful. So, that brings us to the Sunspear title track skill, There's Nothing to Fear. There's Nothing to Fear is 15 energy, 20 second recharge, shout, for 4 seconds, plus 1 second for every 2 ranks in leadership. So that's really important. This is locked to being a Paragon skill. You're not going to use this outside of a Paragon because it's just not going to last very long. Technically you could, but it's going to be kind of underwhelming. So 12 leadership means that this lasts lasts an additional 6 seconds for a total of 10, which is pretty reasonable. But anyway, While this lasts, all party members within earshot take 35% less damage, and affected party members are healed for 60 health when this shout ends. This is, of course, the Sunspear title track skill, so it scales with your Sunspear title track and becomes quite powerful at this sort of rank. So this is an incredibly powerful skill. This is another 5. It's very hard, if I'm playing a primary Paragon, for me to not bring this skill. It is so powerful. It dramatically reduces the damage your party members take by a little over a third. Taking about a third less damage from stuff really reduces the amount of damage you take. And this includes things like Energy Surge that are armor ignoring. And then it's also party heal. This is an incredibly powerful skill. This is basically where the old incoming functionality kind of shifted to. I don't have a whole lot more to say about it. It's just very, very, very strong. That's honestly a lot of the PvE only skills are that way. Only players can use them though. You cannot use them on heroes. Otherwise, I'd use this a lot more often. You can believe that. So I don't necessarily have a whole lot more to say about it. I find the fact that it has to be tied to leadership a little clunky, but I understand why it is. So I don't really have much more to say than that. Let's go ahead and move on to no attribute skills. You'll notice I'm secondary ranger. That's because Antidote Signet will be compared to Remedy Signet in a moment. But first, Cautery Signet. So Cautery Signet is 2 second activation time, 15 second recharge, Elite Signet. All party members lose all conditions. You are set on fire for 1 second for each condition removed in this way. So this is kind of like Martyr. Martyr was a monk elite that transfers all conditions from all party members to you. This removes all those conditions and then sets you on fire. It technically pairs with Remedy Signet. Remedy Signet makes you lose a condition. It's not terribly exciting. I would much prefer using Song of Purification if I want to be dealing with a bunch of conditions on my party, honestly, because I feel like it's going to be overall more effective. It's very rare that I'm going to be in a situation where there's so many conditions flying around my party that I want this, and if I do, they're probably getting reapplied so quickly that this is not that helpful. This can get you really long burning, like set you on fire for a really long time in certain circumstances, which could be useful for transferring, I guess, technically. But I find this to be a very underwhelming skill. I am going to give it a 2. It is a very powerful counter to a lot of conditions on you, but I don't think it's the best counter. And I think that there are better options in Paragon. It's kind of an underwhelming elite, if you ask me. The flavor's there, though. Cauterization involves using heat to prevent bleeding by burning things. There you go. There's your random fact for the day, I guess. I don't know. Let's move on to Hexbreaker Area. So Hexbreaker Area is 8 adrenaline, 2-second activation time, chant. For 10 seconds, the next time each ally within earshot casts a spell, that ally loses 1 hex. I actually like this one quite a lot. It's mostly useful in areas where there's a lot of hexes being flung around, but it's a good way of... I mean, it works well with leadership because it only costs adrenaline. And in areas where there are plenty of hexes, this is a good way of getting hexes off of, like, your party. It goes wide and not deep, but that's really useful, and it comes up frequent enough that you can kind of keep clear. I like this as a way of dealing with hexes, an adrenaline way of dealing with hexes, which I think is interesting. So I'm going to give this one a 4 because I do use it fairly often, and I am fairly fond of it. I think it's a very effective way of kind of helping to manage hexes in some of those areas where a lot of them are used. Again, obviously, it only works with people who have spells, but it's easy enough to have a lot of spells happening in your party. So it can be somewhat reliable. And I like the design of it. I think that this is a really good way of handling this sort of effect. So, Remedy Signet. So Remedy Signet is 1 second activation time, 4 second recharge. Signet, you lose 1 condition. This is a perfectly fine skill that is completely and 100% eclipsed by Antidote Signet, which has the exact same stats of 1 second activation time, 4 second recharge, removes 1 condition from you, as well as Poison, Disease, and Blind. So Antidote Signet can remove multiple conditions. Remedy Signet never will. Antidote Signet is strictly better than Remedy Signet, with the one caveat that you have to be Secondary Ranger, Primary Secondary Ranger. Basically, if I'm picking between Antidote Signet or Remedy Signet, Antidote Signet wins 100% of the time, every time. Remedy Signet is a skill that I would probably consider a lot more often if Antidote Signet did not have the and 1 additional condition clause. I think that clause makes Antidote Signet too good. Remedy Signet, to me, is probably a 3. I think it's okay. I think it's an okay way of managing conditions on yourself. Recharge is fairly low. It doesn't cost any energy. I think that's fine. It's just Antidote Signet does that and more. So it's better. And that's the problem for Remedy Signet. It's a problem with Antidote Signet. Antidote Signet should have been left alone. Didn't need that 1 additional condition clause. Signet of Aggression. Signet of Aggression is 1 second activation time, 5 second recharge. Signet. If you are under the effects of a shout or chant, you gain 2 strikes of adrenaline. I think this one's okay. You do have to have shouts or chants that are staying on you to be able to use this. The recharge is very low, and this isn't actually, like, all things considered, this is actually a pretty strong way of gaining adrenaline, I think. Probably combos super well with For Great Justice, for what that's worth. Because then in that case, I gain you 4 strikes of adrenaline, which is very good. I think this is a decent skill. It's a little awkward to try to use in the middle of battle, although you can. Nice to lead battle with it. A good way to maintain your adrenaline levels, I guess, although kind of clunky while running. I feel like this is... I'm going to give this a 2, but there's a little bit of an asterisk there in that the reason why I'm giving it a 2 is I feel like it's not something I want a lot of the time, and you do have to kind of make sure that you're getting shouts or chants on you, and that you have skills that you want to apply it towards. All those are easy enough things to meet. It's not commonly a effect I want, but I feel that the potential is there. And this is one of those skills that I look at and I'm like, I could see myself wanting to use this sometimes. So I think it's a pretty reasonable skill in that regard. So yeah, I think it's worth giving at least some consideration to. It gives you a little bit of a jump start at the start of battle and stuff like that. So, but not sure how often I do want it. Song of Concentration. 8 adrenaline, 2 second activation time, 5-second recharge, chant for 10 seconds. The next skill used by each ally within earshot cannot be interrupted. So remember, songs are used with all skills. Making skills not able to be interrupted is useful, but in terms of like anti-interruption stuff, this thing's okay. It's hard to use it specifically on the things that you want to prevent from being interrupted, just because it's kind of random when it's going to show up in terms of when the Paragon can use it. And preventing stuff from being interrupted is not so useful that I want this, honestly, all that often. If you're dealing with a lot of interrupts, well, this thing has a 2-second activation time. It's not hard to interrupt this. So I feel like I would want to combo this specifically with skills to prevent this from being interrupted as well, which is questionable. So I feel like this is one of those effects that to me seems like an obvious one, but not necessarily a good one, if that makes any sense. And when I say obvious, I don't necessarily mean that's like obvious to make, but I feel like this is, in the process of looking for effects, you're like, what are things that I can apply to the whole party? Oh, I know, making the next skill not unable to be interrupted, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's good or useful. So if I'm being honest, there's no particular time when I can think of myself wanting this. If I'm wanting to stop things from being interrupted, I feel like there's going to be very specific times when I want to do that. And this skill being so easy to interrupt, basically, I'm probably going to give this a 1, and I'd give it a 2 if it were a shout. That's where it kind of sits. The 2-second activation time, just, it makes this feel really backwards. Like, oh, I'm going to make all the next skills not able to be interrupted, but you can stop this one really easily. That to me is really unappealing. And it's not an effect I want that often, so I'm going to give this guy a 1. I don't know when I really want this, and there's a lot of times when I can stop interrupts and if stopping interrupts is something I really want to do, there's other ways that I can do that I think are superior and therefore are ones that I want. I guess I could see some amount of use for this if clumsiness is happening a lot. So if you're fighting Wind Riders that are spamming clumsiness, then you're probably not getting this off anyway because they like to use soothing images. But you can consider it, I guess. Anyway, next time I'm going to be talking about skills that don't belong to a profession. So that's going to be things like Resurrection Signet, Sunspear Rebirth Signet, and a lot of the PvE-only skills, Lightbringer's stuff, and the racial ones from Eye of the North. So that's what I'll be doing next week, and that'll be then. And for now, I am done. So until then, everyone, take care, and goodbye.